By the time Claire Whitmore entered her own wedding hall, the kingdom was already applauding the woman who would replace her. The thought came quietly, too quietly. It settled beneath her ribs before she fully understood why every face in the room looked past her. The royal hall of Blackwood Palace burned with silver candles and blue ceremonial flames. White flowers climbed the marble pillars. Crystal glasses rang softly from the balconies. Nobles stood in silk and velvet, warriors in polished armor, council elders in formal gray. Everything looked like a wedding. Everything sounded like a celebration. But none of it felt like hers. Claire stood beneath the arched entrance in a white bridal gown that had taken 6 servants to fasten. The bodice held her soft, full waist too tightly. The sleeves brushed her pale wrists. The veil fell over her brown hair in a delicate mist that made her look gentler than she felt. She was pretty tonight. Not sharp, not slender like the women painted beside kings. Pretty in a softer way. Round cheeks, fair skin, warm eyes that had learned too often to lower themselves before someone else did it for her. The seamstresses had called her lovely. The court had called her suitable. Alpha King Adrian Blackwood had once called her necessary. Tonight, she was beginning to understand the difference. A young maid adjusted the edge of Claire's veil with shaking fingers. "You look beautiful, my lady," she whispered. Claire smiled because the girl was kind, not because she believed the room agreed. Across the hall, near the raised throne platform, Madison Vale stood beside the council table. Not beside the guests, not near the other unmarried women. Beside the council table, close to the Luna crown. That was the second thing Claire noticed. The first had been Adrian. He stood beneath the blue flames in black ceremonial armor, silver crown resting against his dark blonde hair. Tall, still, beautiful in the ruthless way powerful men often were. His face gave nothing away to the room, but Claire knew his silences. She had studied them for years. This silence was not nerves. It was preparation. His gaze met hers for only a moment, then moved away, not guiltily. Worse, carefully. Claire's hand tightened around the small bridal bouquet. White roses, silver ribbon, a symbol of purity, the priestess had told her that morning. Claire wondered how many symbols a woman could carry before everyone forgot she was a person. Music began. The hall turned toward her. Finally. But still, no warmth came with the attention. Only expectation. Claire stepped forward. One slow step, then another. The aisle stretched before her like a question no one wanted answered honestly. She passed nobles who had eaten at her table, councilmen whose disputes she had softened, soldiers whose widows she had personally compensated from her own dowry when Blackwood funds delayed. They all smiled. Small smiles. Court smiles. The kind that never reached the eyes because the eyes were too busy measuring what would happen next. 3 nights ago, Adrian had stood in her private chamber while rain touched the windows. He had taken her hand, thumb brushing the inside of her wrist, and said, "Trust me until the wedding. After tonight, no one will question your place again." She had believed him, not because she was foolish, because a heart that has waited too long will kneel before almost any promise that sounds like rest. Claire reached the front of the hall. Adrian did not offer his hand. A small thing. A fatal thing. The Luna crown rested on a velvet cushion between 2 silver candles. Only it was not centered before Claire. It sat closer to Madison. A few inches. Nothing more. But palaces did not misplace crowns by accident. Claire looked at the crown, then at Madison. Madison wore pale gold, not white. Respectful enough to avoid scandal. Bright enough to be seen. Her blonde hair was pinned with pearls, her face calm and lovely, her mouth shaped into something that almost resembled apology. Almost. Claire turned to Adrian. Softly, she asked, "Why is she standing there?" For the first time that night, his jaw tightened. Not with shame. With irritation that she had noticed. "Not now, Claire," he murmured. The words were quiet. Almost harmless. That made them worse. Because there were many ways to betray a bride before making the choice public. Sometimes a man only had to stand beside her in their wedding hall and treat her pain as poorly timed. The priestess lifted her hands. The blue flames rose. The kingdom held its breath. And Claire Whitmore understood, with sudden, terrible clarity, that she had not walked into a wedding. She had walked into a room already arranged for her removal. The priestess began the ceremony as if nothing in the room was wrong. That was how Claire knew everyone had agreed to pretend. Her voice rose beneath the blue flames, smooth and solemn, speaking of sacred vows, royal unity, chosen loyalty, and the ancient duty of a bride who entered the Alpha King's house. Bride. The word moved through the hall with polished grace. Not Luna. Not Queen. Not the woman who would stand beside him. Bride. Claire heard the difference. She stood beside Adrian Blackwood with her bouquet held loosely in both hands. White roses trembling only because the stems were fragile. Her own fingers remained still. That surprised her a little. She had imagined her wedding differently. Not grander. Not happier exactly. Only warmer. She had imagined Adrian looking at her when the priestess spoke. She had imagined his hand finding hers before the vows. She had imagined, foolishly perhaps, that after years of waiting, the room would finally understand she had not been standing beside him by accident. But Adrian did not reach for her. His attention moved past the priestess, past the crown, past Claire, toward Madison Vale. A small glance, brief enough for the court to ignore, long enough for a bride to remember forever. Claire lowered her gaze to the Luna crown. Silver branches curved upward from its base, each point set with moonstone. It was beautiful in the severe way royal things often were. Cold, perfect, made for a portrait more than a woman. It should have been placed before her. Everyone knew that. Even the servants knew it. Yet the crown rested closer to Madison's side of the table, close enough that the blue flames painted silver across Madison's hands. Madison noticed too. Of course she did. Her fingers remained folded. Her face remained soft. But she did not step away. That told Claire enough. The priestess continued. Tonight, the Blackwood line receives its bride before the council and the kingdom. Receives. Claire almost smiled. Not joyfully. Not bitterly. Just with the tired clarity of a woman finally hearing the language beneath the ceremony. She was not being chosen. She was being received. Like tribute. Like an alliance gift. Like something useful delivered to a throne. Years of waiting rearranged themselves inside her. The first winter Adrian had asked her to remain at court after his father died. The spring she rewrote half his council proposals because grief made him reckless. The summer she sat with wounded border wolves while Madison Vale disappeared into another territory, leaving nothing behind but rumors and old promises. Claire had never disappeared. That had been her mistake. She had stayed through every cold dinner, every postponed conversation, every council meeting where Adrian let older men speak of her as if softness meant weakness. She had thought endurance would become proof. Instead, it had become expectation. The priestess turned toward Adrian. Alpha King. Before the vows continue, the council requires your declaration of the woman who will hold ceremonial authority during the transition moon. A murmur moved through the hall. Soft. Rehearsed. Claire felt it then. The trap opening beneath the floor. Transition moon. Ceremonial authority. Words chosen carefully enough to wound without admitting blood had been drawn. Adrian's face remained controlled. Madison's eyes lowered. The Luna crown glowed between them. Claire looked at her bridegroom. For 1 second, only one, she waited for him to end it. To laugh coldly at the council. To move the crown before her. To take her hand and make every whisper in the room ashamed of itself. But Adrian did not move. The priestess asked, "Who will stand beside the crown in your name?" Silence. The hall leaned toward the answer. Claire did not. She had already begun to understand. Adrian turned his head. Not to Claire. To Madison. Madison Vale will remain by my side during the transition. The words did not echo. They did not need to. They entered the room and changed its shape. A few nobles exhaled in relief. Someone in the balcony began to clap. Then another. Then the sound spread, careful at first, then confident, until applause filled Claire's wedding hall for another woman. Claire stood in the middle of it. White gown, white roses, white veil. A bride surrounded by celebration that did not belong to her. Madison lifted her eyes at last. This time, the apology in her expression was gone. Adrian finally looked at Claire. Maybe he expected tears. Maybe anger. Maybe the quiet, wounded obedience he had mistaken for love all these years. Claire gave him none of it. She only looked at him as the applause thundered around them. And something inside her became very, very clear. The applause did not break Claire Whitmore. That was what the court misunderstood first. They saw her standing in the middle of the wedding hall, dressed in white, surrounded by blue flame and silver candles while the kingdom applauded Madison Vale, and they waited for the bride to shatter. A gasp, a sob, a trembling hand, a public wound large enough to entertain them. Claire gave them nothing. She held the bouquet loosely in front of her and listened to the sound roll across the hall. It came from the balconies first, then from the council tables, then from the noble families who had always known how to survive by clapping for whoever seemed safest to support. Adrian stood beside her, still, controlled, as if the choice he had made should not disturb the ceremony too much. That was almost worse than the choice itself. He had not chosen Madison like a man overcome by love. He had chosen her like a king adjusting furniture. Claire turned her head slightly and looked at him. He must have felt it, because his gaze moved back to her. For the first time that night, something cautious entered his eyes. Good. Let caution come. Let it arrive late and find nothing left to protect. The priestess lowered her ceremonial book, uncertain now. The blue flames flickered at her sides, throwing pale light over the Luna crown resting too close to Madison's hands. Madison stepped nearer to the table. Only one step. Small, elegant, cruel in its softness. The applause faded gradually, not because the room regretted it, but because everyone wanted to hear what Claire would do next. She did nothing. For one long moment, she only looked at the crown. It was not large, not heavy enough to bend the head, but Claire had spent years carrying the invisible weight of it. She had carried it when Adrian's counsel dismissed her opinions until they needed her solutions. She had carried it when border widows came to her because the king was too busy to answer grief. She had carried it when Madison's name still haunted rooms Adrian claimed belonged to the future. She had carried the crown before anyone ever offered to place it on her head. And tonight, they had set it closer to another woman. Claire stepped toward the table. A hush moved through the hall. Adrian's voice lowered beside her. Claire. There it was. Her name. Finally. Not when Madison entered. Not when the council asked the question. Not when the applause began. Now, when she moved. Claire did not answer him. She placed the bouquet on the table beside the Luna crown. The white roses looked small there. Almost innocent. Almost foolish. Then she lifted her hands to the back of her neck. The bridal necklace Adrian had given her that morning rested against her skin. Silver chain. Moonstone pendant. A delicate piece chosen to match the crown. He had fastened it himself before the ceremony. His fingers had brushed her nape. His voice had been low. You look exactly as you should. At the time, she had thought he meant beautiful. Now she understood he meant useful. Claire unclasped the necklace. A murmur passed through the hall. Adrian stepped closer. Do not make this a scene. The words entered her quietly. Not like a knife. Like the final page of a book she should have closed long ago. Claire turned to him. Her expression remained calm. Soft. Almost kind. That is strange, she said. I thought the scene began when you chose another woman in my wedding hall. Silence hit the room. Immediate. Absolute. Even Madison went still. Adrian's jaw tightened. This is political. Claire looked at him for a moment. Then at Madison. Then at the crown. Of course, she said. It always is when my pain becomes inconvenient. She placed the necklace beside the crown. Not thrown. Not dropped. Placed. Carefully. Respectfully. As if returning something borrowed from a life that had never meant to keep her. The priestess inhaled sharply. Lady Whitmore, the vows are not complete. Claire looked at her. No, she said. They are not. No one seemed to know whether that was agreement or refusal. Claire did not explain. She had explained enough in her life. Explained why softened policies saved lives. Explained why delayed payments ruined families. Explained why Madison's return had changed the air around Adrian. Explained why she needed reassurance without sounding needy. Tonight, she was finished making truth easier for people who preferred lies with candles around them. Adrian reached for her wrist. Not hard, not harsh, but entitled, as though touch still belonged to him because the ceremony had not ended properly. Claire looked down at his hand before it made contact. He stopped. The whole hall saw it. That small hesitation said more than any accusation could have. Claire raised her eyes. You do not get to stop me now. Adrian's face changed. Just slightly. The first crack. Not regret. Fear that control was leaving the room without asking permission. You are my bride, he said. Claire almost smiled. Almost. Only in name, she replied. The words returned to him dressed in his own cruelty. Madison's face paled. So she had heard that phrase before. Good. Let her stand inside it too. Claire gathered the front of her gown just enough to walk. The white silk whispered over the marble as she turned away from the altar, the crown, the bouquet, and the man who had mistaken her silence for consent. No one blocked her. Not the warriors. Not the council. Not the priestess. Because the room had prepared for tears. It had not prepared for dignity. At the foot of the aisle, Claire paused and looked back once. Not at Adrian first. At the crown. Then at Madison. Then finally at him. Her voice carried through the hall, low and clear. I am making room. Adrian stared at her. For the first time all night, he looked as if he did not understand the woman he had been so certain would stay. Claire turned again. This time, she did not stop. Behind her, no one clapped. No one whispered. No one breathed loudly enough to be noticed. The wedding hall remained frozen beneath blue fire while the bride walked out alone, leaving the Luna crown, the bridal necklace, and every unfinished vow behind her. The hallway outside the wedding hall did not feel like freedom. Not yet. Freedom, Claire thought, probably did not begin with shaking legs, a too-tight wedding gown, and the sound of your own celebration going silent behind closed doors. It began smaller. With one step no one gave you permission to take. Then another. The great doors shut behind her with a soft, final sound. Not a slam. Not a scene. Just wood meeting stone while an entire kingdom remained on the other side, trapped with the truth it had applauded. Claire stood alone beneath the arched corridor, white veil trailing behind her, one hand still holding the front of her gown so she could walk without stumbling. The palace seemed colder here. Without music. Without candles. Without 100 people pretending betrayal looked like duty. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, turning the marble floor silver. The portraits of former Blackwood Lunas lined the walls in perfect sequence. Slender women. Severe women. Women with pale throats and straight backs, painted as if they had never wanted anything they were not allowed to have. Claire looked at them as she passed. For years, she had wondered whether she could become one of them. Not because she wanted the frame. Because she wanted the certainty. A place. A name. A life where no one looked past her toward the woman they preferred. Now the portraits watched her leave in the dress she had worn to be accepted. She almost laughed. The sound did not come. Footsteps struck the corridor behind her. Fast. Familiar. Claire. She stopped. Not because Adrian called. Because she had known he would. Men like Adrian did not chase a woman when she was hurt. They chased when her leaving made them look weak. She turned slowly. Alpha King Adrian Blackwood came through the hall doors still wearing his black ceremonial armor, his crown glinting beneath the corridor lamps. Behind him, the wedding hall remained frozen in blue light. Claire could see Madison standing near the Luna crown. Still there. Still close. Adrian shut the doors behind him. As if that could make this private. Claire waited. He took several steps toward her, then stopped when he saw her face. That was wise. Her expression held no tears. No trembling accusation. Only the kind of quiet that came after a woman had heard enough to stop asking questions. What are you doing? He asked. Claire looked down at herself. The white gown. The veil. The empty place at her throat where the necklace had been. Then she looked back at him. Leaving the room you chose for someone else. His jaw tightened. I did not choose Madison over you. The lie was so smooth it almost sounded practiced. Claire tilted her head slightly. No. This is temporary. Temporary, she repeated. A small word. A familiar word. He had used it often. Temporary delays. Temporary distance. Temporary rumors. Temporary meetings with Madison after she returned to court. Temporary humiliations Claire was expected to survive quietly until the future became kinder. Adrian stepped closer. The council needed reassurance. Madison has political support from houses we cannot afford to offend. We. The word fell between them. He seemed to realize it a second too late. Claire's smile was soft. Almost tired. Do not use me inside that word tonight. Silence. His eyes sharpened. You are upset. That almost did it. Not the betrayal. Not Madison. Not the crown placed closer to another woman. That. You are upset. As if her pain were a weather condition. As if the correct response was to wait until it passed. Claire's fingers tightened once around the fabric of her gown. Then relaxed. No, she said. I am awake. Adrian stared at her. The corridor felt suddenly too still. From behind the closed doors, a faint murmur rose from the hall. The kingdom beginning to breathe again. To rearrange what had happened into something less ugly. Claire knew how they would speak of it by morning. A delicate misunderstanding. A ceremonial adjustment. a bride overcome by emotion. They would soften the knife until it looked like silver. Adrian lowered his voice. Come back inside. No, one word. Quiet. Clean. His expression changed. She had refused him before, but rarely so simply. Usually there was explanation attached. A reason. A softened edge. A way for him to remain kind in his own mind. Tonight, she gave him nothing to hold. His tone cooled. Do not embarrass yourself. Claire looked at him for a long moment. There he was. Not hidden now. Not complicated. The man beneath the promises. The king who could give another woman her place in front of the court, then accuse the bride of embarrassment for walking away. You already handled that for both of us, she said. The word struck. She saw it. A small flinch behind his eyes. Good. Let one thing reach him. Adrian's hand lifted as if to touch her arm. Again, she looked at it before it landed. Again, he stopped. The second hesitation hurt him more than the first. She could tell. Power did not like discovering boundaries in public. You are my bride, he said lower now. Claire stepped back once. Not afraid. Clear. I was your bride when I walked into that hall. Her voice remained steady. I was your bride when the crown was placed near Madison. Another step back. I was your bride when the council asked who would stand beside you. Another. I was your bride when you said her name. Adrian's breathing changed. Claire held his gaze. But I stopped being your fool when the room applauded. The corridor went silent. Even the old portraits seemed to listen. For the first time, Adrian had no immediate answer. That gave her the space to turn. She began walking again. This time, he did not call her name. Not at first. But as she reached the end of the corridor, his voice followed her. Where will you go? Claire paused beneath the last window. Beyond the glass, rain had begun to fall over the eastern courtyard. Carriages waited near the gate, dark shapes beneath lantern light. One bore no Blackwood crest. Only a black wolf carved into the door. Rowan Cross. Adrian's enemy. Claire looked at the carriage. Then back at the man who had taught her how little a promise could weigh. I do not know yet, she said. That was the honest answer. Then she added, softer, colder, final. But I know which room I am done standing in. She left him there beneath the portraits of women who had stayed. And as Claire walked toward the bridal chamber for the last time, the wedding music behind the doors did not resume. The bridal chamber waited for Claire as if nothing had happened. That was the cruelest part. Not the crown. Not the applause. Not even Adrian saying Madison's name in the center of the room where Claire had worn white for him. It was this. The flowers still breathing softly in porcelain vases. The candles still burning beside the wide bed. The silk sheets turned down with delicate care. The silver tray of sugared pears and untouched wine waiting near the balcony, prepared for a bride and groom who no longer existed. Everything was ready for a marriage the hall had already killed. Claire closed the door behind her. Softly, the latch clicked. For the first time that night, she was alone. No counsel. No Madison. No Adrian asking her to make betrayal easier to manage. Only silence. Real silence. Not the silence of a court waiting to judge her. Not the silence of a man withholding tenderness until it benefited him. This silence belonged to her. Claire stood in the center of the chamber, still holding the front of her wedding gown in one hand. The white fabric pooled around her feet, heavy with embroidery, heavy with expectation, heavy with a future that had never truly been offered. She looked toward the mirror. A bride stared back. Fair skin, soft round cheeks, brown hair pinned beneath a veil that made her look delicate enough to be handled and forgettable enough to be replaced. Claire studied herself for a long moment. Then she reached up and removed the veil. Slowly, carefully, the pins pulled at her hair. One caught and stung her scalp. She did not wince. Small pain felt honest tonight. Better than ceremony. Better than soft lies spoken beneath blue flames. When the veil came free, she held it in both hands. It was beautiful. Of course it was. Everything made to cover a woman's grief was usually beautiful. Claire crossed to the bed and laid the veil across the untouched silk. Not thrown, not crushed. Laid, like something dead that deserved a clean sheet. Then she turned to the wardrobe. Inside hung the clothes chosen for her new life as Blackwood's bride. Silver gowns, white dinner dresses, pale blue visiting robes. Soft colors meant to flatter the royal house and quiet the woman wearing them. Claire touched none of them. At the very back, hidden behind ceremonial silk, was a dark traveling cloak and a simple green wool dress. She had packed them weeks ago without admitting why. Not because she planned to run, because some part of her had been preparing for the truth before her heart was ready to name it. She changed without hurry. The wedding gown took time to remove. Tiny buttons, tight lacing, silk that clung to her waist as if the dress itself did not want to release the role it had been sewn for. Claire pulled free at last. Her body looked softer without the gown structure. Fuller, human, not shaped for a throne, not carved for portraits, just hers. For the first time that night, she did not apologize to herself for taking up space. The green wool dress fit plainly and warmly. The cloak settled over her shoulders with a weight that felt useful instead of decorative. She packed one small bag, coin pouch, spare stockings, a plain comb, a knife her father had given her before he died. No jewels, no wedding gifts, no letters. Her hand paused over the bedside table, where Adrian had left a small silver ring meant to be given after the vows. Bride ring, not Luna ring. Even now, she noticed the difference. Claire picked it up and turned it once beneath the candlelight. A circle, a promise, a closed thing. She placed it beside the veil on the bed. Then, after a moment, she walked to the mirror. A smear of bridal red still colored her lips. She looked at it, at the woman painted for a man who had spent the evening choosing someone else. Claire lifted a cloth and wiped half of it away. Only half. Enough to ruin the illusion. Not enough to hide that it had existed. That was the message. Not a letter. Not a plea. Not a paragraph explaining pain to people who had watched it happen. Just a veil on the bed. A ring beside it. A bride's reflection interrupted. A life left unfinished on purpose. A knock came at the door. Claire stilled. Claire. Adrian again. His voice was lower now. Less certain than before. Good. Let uncertainty stand outside for once. She did not answer. The handle turned. Locked. A pause. Then, opened the door. Not angry. Not yet. Still expecting the world to obey its familiar shape. Claire lifted her small bag from the chair and crossed to the old prayer screen near the fireplace. Behind it, a narrow servant passage led toward the Eastern Chapel and then down to the service court. She knew because servants spoke near women they thought were too gentle to act on what they heard. Claire, Adrian said again, do not do this. She stopped with her hand on the hidden latch. For one breath, the girl who had loved him tried to rise. The girl who would have opened the door. Explained. Cried quietly enough not to embarrass him. Asked whether any part of tonight had hurt him too. Claire let that girl stand inside her for a moment. Then she let her go. Adrian knocked once. Harder. Claire. She looked back at the bridal chamber. The candles. The silk bed. The veil. The ring. The half-erased mouth in the mirror. The room was no longer waiting for a marriage. It was holding evidence. Claire pressed the latch. The wall shifted behind the prayer screen, revealing a narrow, dark passage. Before stepping inside, she spoke quietly toward the locked door. Give the room to Madison too. Silence followed. Complete. Then Claire entered the passage and pulled the wall closed behind her. The last thing she heard before the darkness sealed her away was Adrian striking the door with his fist, finally loud enough for the palace to know the bride was gone. The servant passage was too narrow for a bride. That was the first thought Claire had after the wall closed behind her. Not fear, not grief, not even shock. Only the strange, practical realization that Blackwood Palace had secret paths for servants, guards, priests, and fleeing kings, but never for women in wedding gowns who finally understood they had been used. Good thing she was no longer wearing one. The dark green wool brushed against the stone as she moved forward. Her travel bag knocked softly against her hip. Behind her, far beyond the sealed wall, Adrian struck the chamber door again. Once, then harder, then her name. Claire. The sound reached her faintly through stone, softened by distance, stripped of command. For a moment, it almost sounded human. Claire stopped. Only for a moment. The darkness held its breath around her. She remembered another version of his voice. Lower. Warmer. 3 winters ago, when he had found her asleep over council reports and lifted the blanket around her shoulders. You should rest, he had murmured. I notice what you do for me. She had carried that sentence for years. A foolish little flame. Tonight, she finally understood the cruelty of being noticed only in private. Claire started walking again. The passage sloped downward behind the old chapel wall. Dust lined the stones. Cobwebs trembled where her shoulder brushed too close. Her body did not move elegantly through the narrow space. She was too soft, too full, too alive for these hidden bones of the palace. For years, rooms had made her aware of her shape. Council chairs with arms too narrow, court gowns designed for sharper women, portrait halls where every painted Luna looked like a blade wrapped in silk. Claire had apologized to the world silently for taking up space. Tonight, the passage scraped her sleeve, and she did not apologize. Let the stone learn to make room. At the bottom of the stair, faint music drifted from above. The wedding hall. No, her wedding hall. Still silent, mostly. No full orchestra. No resumed dancing. Only broken murmurs traveling through walls. The kingdom trying to decide what story would save itself by morning. The bride was emotional. The bride misunderstood. The bride needed air. The bride left. Claire almost smiled in the dark. Yes, let them get one thing right. She reached the eastern chapel door and pressed her ear against the wood. Nothing. She eased it open. The chapel beyond was empty, lit only by a few dying candles near the altar. Moonlight fell across rows of dark benches. A statue of the moon goddess watched from the far wall, stone hands open, face unreadable. Claire stepped inside. Her gaze moved to the altar. 2 white candles stood there, prepared for the bride and groom to light together after the vows. Unlit. Waiting. She walked toward them. For 1 second, she considered touching the wick, lighting 1 candle, leaving some small proof that she had still believed in something sacred. Then she lowered her hand. No, sacred things did not need to be performed for rooms that had betrayed them. Claire crossed the chapel and reached the side exit. Rain met her first. Cold, sharp, honest. It struck her face the moment she stepped into the Eastern service court, soaking loose strands of brown hair against her cheeks. The courtyard lay half-shadowed beneath low clouds. Lanterns flickered along the walls. Stable hands hurried near the carriage line, preparing departing guests whose loyalties had suddenly become complicated. No one noticed her at first. That was another mercy. A bride in white would have stopped the courtyard. A woman in green wool with rain on her face could become shadow if she moved like one. Claire kept her head lowered and walked toward the eastern gate. Her shoes slipped once on wet stone. She caught herself against a pillar. The rough surface bit into her palm. Small pain. Honest pain. Behind her, bells began to ring inside the palace. Not wedding bells. Alarm. Claire did not run. Running belonged to panic. She was beyond panic now. She moved steadily past the chapel wall, past the storage arch, past 2 guards arguing over whether the king had ordered all gates sealed. He said the bridal wing, one muttered. He said no one leaves. No, he said she does not leave. Claire paused in the shadow of a rain barrel. The second guard laughed nervously. And where would she go dressed like that? They were looking toward the wedding wing, toward white silk, toward the version of her Adrian expected to find. Claire stepped out from the shadow after they passed. Underestimated women made excellent ghosts. The eastern gate stood ahead, half open for a line of diplomatic carriages. 1 carriage waited apart from the others. Black wood, iron wheels, a carved wolf crest on the door. Rowan Cross, Adrian's enemy. The man whose name made Blackwood councilmen lower their voices and sharpen their plans. The man Adrian called ruthless because Rowan did not flatter kings who confused pride with strategy. Claire had seen him once at a treaty banquet. He had not spoken to her much. But when she corrected a disputed border figure, he had listened. Actually listened. That had been enough for her to remember. A stable boy opened the carriage door, then froze when he saw her. His eyes dropped to her wet cloak, her small bag, her bare throat where the bridal necklace should have been. Recognition dawned. My lady. Claire lifted 1 finger to her lips. The boy went silent. Not because she commanded fear, because kindness still existed in strange places. A voice came from the side of the carriage. Lady Whitmore. Claire turned. Alpha King Rowan Cross stood beneath the gate arch, dressed in a dark traveling coat, reins silvering the shoulders. He was tall, broad, calm in the way dangerous men were calm when they did not need to prove danger. 2 guards stood behind him, but neither reached for a weapon. Rowan looked at her face first. Not her body, not her wet cloak, not the missing necklace. Her face. That almost undid her. Almost. Are you lost? He asked. Claire looked back once toward the palace. Blue light glowed through the high windows of the wedding hall. Alarm bells rang louder now. Somewhere inside, Adrian would be finding the veil on the bed, the ring beside it, the half-erased mouth in the mirror. Soon he would understand. Soon was not now. Claire turned back to Rowan. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, hoarse, certain. "I am leaving." Rowan's expression did not shift into pity. Good. She could not have survived pity. By force, he asked, or by choice? The question entered her like a hand offered without touching. No one had asked her that tonight. Not Adrian. Not the council. Not the priestess. Not the kingdom applauding another woman beside her crown. Claire tightened her grip on the travel bag. "Choice," she said. Rain fell between them. Rowan stepped aside from the carriage door, not opening his arms, not claiming her, only making space. "Then choose where you stand." Behind her, the palace doors burst open. A shout crossed the courtyard. "Claire! Adrian!" Too late. Claire did not turn immediately. She looked at the open carriage, at Rowan waiting beside it, at the eastern road beyond the gate, dark and unknown and not yet cruel to her. Then she stepped forward, not into Rowan's arms, not yet, into the first doorway that had opened without asking her to be smaller. Adrian Blackwood reached the eastern courtyard in time to see Claire choose the door. Not Rowan Cross. Not yet. The door. That distinction mattered more than Adrian understood. Claire stepped toward the black carriage with rain sliding down her face, her dark green cloak clinging to the soft shape of her body, one hand holding the small travel bag that carried what remained of the life she had decided to keep. Behind her, the palace doors stood open. Lights spilled across the wet stones. Blue from the wedding hall, gold from the bridal wing, red from the alarm lanterns guards had begun lifting along the walls. Everything royal, everything urgent, everything too late. "Claire." Adrian's voice crossed the courtyard like a command, trying to remember how to become a plea. She stopped, only because she chose to. Rowan Cross did not touch her. That was the first thing Adrian saw. The enemy king stood beside the carriage in a dark rain-soaked coat, broad shoulders still, expression unreadable. He did not place a hand at Claire's back, did not take her bag, did not claim space around her body as if rescue gave him rights. He simply waited. That restraint made Adrian angrier than possession would have, because it showed the courtyard something ugly. Claire was not being taken. She was leaving. Adrian came down the steps fast, black ceremonial armor unfastened at one shoulder, crown gone, hair damp from the rain. He looked less like the king from the wedding hall now and more like a man who had opened a door and found the room behind it empty. The guards moved uncertainly around him. No one knew whether to stop the bride. No one knew whether she was still the bride. That confusion followed Claire like a second veil. "Step away from her," Adrian said to Rowan. Rowan's gaze moved to him slowly. Not threatened, not impressed. "Did she ask me to?" The words struck the courtyard cleanly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "This is Blackwood territory. And yet," Rowan said, "she is the only one here who seems to know where she stands." Silence. Rain filled it. Claire closed her eyes for half a second. Not from weakness, from exhaustion. Adrian saw that and misread it instantly. He stepped closer. "Claire, come back inside. We can discuss this privately." Privately. The word almost made her turn cruel. Almost. She faced him fully. Her brown hair had loosened from its pins. The rain had washed away most of the bridal color from her lips. Her fair cheeks were cold, her eyes steady, and without the white gown, without the veil, without the necklace, she looked less like a bride Adrian could manage and more like a woman he had never taken the time to meet. "There is nothing private left," she said. His expression sharpened. "Do not do this in front of him." Claire looked at Rowan, then back at Adrian. "You chose Madison in front of everyone." A few guards lowered their eyes. Adrian heard the movement. His pride heard it too. "This is not what you think." "No," Claire said softly. "It is exactly what I heard." The words landed. For the first time, Adrian's face changed with something close to fear. So he understood. Not everything, but enough. "You followed me?" he asked. Claire almost laughed. "No, I was looking for my husband." The courtyard went still. Even Rowan's eyes darkened slightly at that. Adrian swallowed. The word husband had reached him too late to become anything useful. Claire continued. "I found an Alpha King promising another woman the place I was dressed to receive. That was political. There it is again." He stopped. She stepped toward him once. Only once. Enough for the rain to gather between them like a border neither of them had earned yet. Politics did not make you say she would remain by your side, Claire said. Politics did not make you let the crown sit closer to her. Politics did not make you tell me not to embarrass myself after you embarrassed me first. Adrian's hand flexed at his side. I was trying to protect the throne. Claire nodded. The gesture was small, tired, final. Yes, she said. You were. That agreement unsettled him more than argument would have. Then she added, you just forgot I was not furniture beneath it. Silence crashed down so hard, even the horses shifted. Rowan did not smile, did not interfere, did not rescue the sentence from its weight. He let it stand. That, too, Claire noticed. Adrian looked at her as if she had struck him. She had not. She had simply stopped softening the truth before handing it to him. From behind Adrian, Madison appeared at the palace doors. Still in pale gold. Still beautiful. Still close enough to the light to look innocent. Claire saw her. Adrian did too. His face tightened. That was answer enough. Claire looked past him at the woman who had waited beside the Luna crown. Then back at Adrian. You should go back, she said. His eyes widened slightly. To her. To the room you arranged. The words were quiet. They cut anyway. Madison's lips parted. No sound came out. Adrian took another step toward Claire. This time, Rowan moved. Not in front of her. Only nearer. A shift of weight. A warning without performance. Adrian's wolf rose in his eyes. Careful, Cross. Rowan's voice stayed calm. I am. That is why I am not touching her. Adrian froze. Because the answer named everything. The hand he had tried to place on Claire's wrist in the hall. The door he had ordered open. The ceremony he had expected her to re-enter. His claim had been everywhere tonight. His care had been late. Claire turned away from Adrian. The movement was small, but it ended something. He felt it. She saw that he felt it. Claire, he said, and this time her name broke slightly. That almost hurt. Almost. But almost was not enough to build a life on. She reached the carriage step. Rowan remained aside. The door stayed open. Waiting. Claire paused with one hand on the frame and looked back one final time. Rain ran down her face like tears she had refused to give the wedding hall. You chose another woman in my wedding hall, she said. I am choosing myself at your enemy's gate. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Claire climbed into the carriage. Rowan closed the door gently. Not like a claim. Like respect. Adrian lunged one step forward before his guards caught themselves and followed, but Rowan's men were already at the horses. The carriage began to move. Slowly at first, then steadily toward the eastern gate. Adrian stood in the rain as it passed him, close enough to see Claire through the small window. She did not look away. That was worse than if she had. There was no hatred in her face. No plea. No unfinished question. Only a calm that told him she had already left the part of herself that used to wait for his answer. The carriage rolled through the gate. Beyond it, the road bent into darkness. Adrian did not call again. Not because he did not want to. Because for the first time in his life, he understood that a command would only prove why she had gone. Behind him, Madison whispered his name. He did not turn. In front of him, the enemy carriage carried his bride into the rain. And the kingdom that had applauded another woman stood behind him, suddenly silent enough to hear what absence sounded like. The carriage did not feel like rescue. Claire was grateful for that. Rescue would have required her to be helpless. It would have turned Rowan Cross into a savior and herself into something carried from one man's story into another. This was different. The carriage was dark, dry, and quiet. A choice with wheels. Claire sat on the left side with both hands folded around the small travel bag in her lap, rainwater dripping from the edge of her cloak onto the floorboards. Her hair clung damply to her cheeks. Her shoes were muddy. Her green dress was wrinkled from the hidden passage and the desperate walk through the service court. No one would mistake her for a bride now. Good. Across from her, Rowan Cross sat with one arm resting near the window, his dark coat still wet from the rain. He had entered only after she did. He had closed the door only after giving her enough time to change her mind. Even now, he kept to his side of the carriage, not crowding the air between them. Claire noticed. She noticed because Adrian had trained her to notice absence. Absence of warmth. Absence of defense. Absence of a hand offered when it mattered. Rowan offered a different absence. No claim. No demand. No question shaped like ownership. The carriage passed through the eastern gate. Iron wheels rolled over wet stone, then onto the road beyond Blackwood Palace. The sound changed at once. Softer. Rougher. More honest. Claire looked through the rain-streaked window. The palace grew smaller behind them. Silver towers, blue flames still glowing in the wedding hall windows. A beautiful place, if one stood far enough away not to hear what happened inside it. Her chest tightened, not with regret, with recognition. She had lived there for years and still never fully belonged to a single room. Rowan's voice broke the silence. You do not have to speak. Claire turned from the window. He was not looking at her like she might entertain him with grief. His gaze rested on the dark road ahead, giving her the mercy of not being watched while she tried not to fall apart. That almost undid her. Almost. She swallowed. People keep telling me what I do not have to do tonight. Then I will ask instead. A pause. The carriage lamps flickered softly between them. Do you want me to take you to the border, or somewhere else? Claire stared at him. The question was simple. Too simple. No one at Blackwood Palace would have asked it that way. There, every question came with a hidden answer. Every offer had a cost. Every kindness expected gratitude shaped like obedience. Rowan waited. Not patiently in the gentle sense. Patiently in the dangerous sense. As if time did not frighten him. Claire looked down at her hands. The left one still bore the pale indentation where the bridal ring should have been placed after the vows. No mark. No blood. No visible wound. Only absence. I do not know where somewhere else is, she said. Then the border first. Why? His eyes returned to hers. Because a border gives you options. The words settled in the carriage. Options. Not safety. Not protection. Not mine. Options. Claire felt something inside her loosen by one careful thread. Outside, thunder rolled over the eastern road. The carriage turned sharply, and through the small rear window, Claire saw movement near the palace gate. Riders. Blackwood riders. Adrian. Her body reacted before her pride could stop it. Her fingers clenched around the travel bag. Breath caught in her throat. Rowan saw. He did not reach for her. He only glanced once through the rear curtain. He is following. Claire closed her eyes. Of course he was. Not because he had chosen her in the hall. Not because he had stopped the applause. Not because he had defended her when it mattered. Because she had left. Men like Adrian understood possession most clearly when the door closed. Will he catch us? She asked. No. The answer came without arrogance. Without hurry. Just fact. Claire opened her eyes. You sound certain. I know my roads. And if he crosses into yours? A faint shadow touched Rowan's expression. Then he admits before every border court that he chased the bride he publicly humiliated into enemy territory. Claire looked out at the ring. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made the wound more precise. Publicly humiliated. Clean words. True words. Words Adrian would have called dramatic if she had spoken them first. The carriage lantern swung gently as the road dipped into pine forest. Shadows closed around them, dark branches swallowing the last distant glow of Blackwood Palace. For the first time that night, Claire could no longer see the wedding hall. Her throat tightened. She pressed her lips together. No, not here. Not in front of him. Rowan looked away before the first tear could form. That was when one fell. Only one. Hot. Silent. It slipped down her cheek and vanished beneath her jaw before she could wipe it away. The carriage kept moving. Rowan said nothing. The silence held. Not empty. Not cold. Room enough for one tear and no performance around it. After a while, Claire whispered. He told her I would understand my place. Rowan's jaw tightened. Only slightly. Enough. Claire saw it and continued, because the words had started and perhaps they needed somewhere to go. He was right, she said. I did understand. Just not the place he meant. Rowan's gaze returned to her. No pity. No satisfaction. Only attention. What place did you understand? Claire looked at the rain-streaked glass, where her reflection appeared in broken pieces. Round face. Pale skin. Damp hair. No veil. No necklace. No crown. I understood that I was standing somewhere I had already been removed from. The carriage grew very quiet. Outside, the horses quickened. The sound of Blackwood riders faded farther behind. Rowan leaned back slightly. Then you left correctly. Claire turned to him. For some reason, that hurt. Perhaps because no one had said that to her. No one in the palace would. They would say she overreacted, embarrassed herself, created instability, walked into enemy hands, shamed the crown. Rowan had said she left correctly, as if leaving could be an act of order, as if dignity had direction. Claire breathed in slowly. The next words came easier. I am not going to your territory as a weapon against him. I know. You do not know me. I know weapons do not ask whether they are being used. That silenced her. Not because it was clever. Because it was respectful in a way that did not soften her into fragility. The carriage began climbing toward the ridge road. Ahead, through the wet trees, a black stone marker appeared beneath a lantern. The border. Claire's hand tightened around the bag again. Behind her was Adrian. Madison. The crown. The room arranged for her removal. Ahead was Rowan Cross. Enemy land. Unknown walls. A future with no promises and therefore, strangely, fewer lies. The carriage slowed near the marker. Rowan opened the door first, stepped into the rain, then moved aside. He did not offer his hand until she looked at it. Even then, he held it palm up. A question. Claire stared at it, then placed her hand in his. Not because she needed help, because she chose the contact. His grip was steady, warm, brief. The moment her feet touched the ground, he released her. The border stone stood a few steps ahead. Blackwood land behind. Cross territory beyond. Rain fell between both as if the sky refused to choose sides. From far down the road, a wolf's howl tore through the storm. Adrian. Closer now. Claire did not turn. Rowan watched her face. Once you cross, he cannot take you back without starting a war. Claire looked at the border, then at him. And if I do not cross, then I still will not hand you to him. The answer came too fast to be strategy, too calm to be performance. Claire felt the final thread of fear loosen. Not disappear. Loosen. She stepped toward the border marker. Rain soaked through her cloak. Mud clung to her shoes. Her body ached. Her heart hurt in places she did not yet have names for. Still, she stepped. One foot crossed the line, then the other. Nothing magical happened. No thunder. No moonlight. No sacred sign. Only the soft sound of a woman choosing not to return. Rowan crossed after her, not before. Behind them, the riders reached the far bend of the road. Adrian's voice broke through the rain. Claire. She closed her eyes. For one breath. Then opened them. This time, she did not stop. The border was behind her. The road ahead belonged to no promise that had already betrayed her. And when Rowan walked beside her into enemy territory, he did not take her arm. He simply matched her pace. Adrian Blackwood stopped at the border because, for the first time that night, the world did not move for him. Not the guards. Not the road. Not the rain. Not Claire. The black stone marker stood between them, half buried in wet grass, carved with two wolves facing opposite directions. One bore the Blackwood crown. The other carried the scarred crest of Cross territory. A line. Simple. Old. Unimpressed by kings. Claire stood on the other side of it with rain sliding down her face and Rowan Cross beside her, not touching her, not claiming her, not smiling like a victor. That almost made Adrian angrier. If Rowan had looked triumphant, Adrian could have called it theft. If Rowan had held Claire by the arm, Adrian could have called it force. If Claire had looked frightened, Adrian could have crossed the line with every law on his side and taken her back beneath the name of protection. But none of those things were true. Claire stood freely, still soaked, still exhausted, still soft-bodied beneath a dark cloak that did not belong to the wedding hall, but free, and that left Adrian with no enemy large enough to hide behind. Claire, he said. Her name sounded different in the rain. Smaller, less certain. She looked at him across the border, and for one terrible second, Adrian saw the whole night reflected in her eyes. The crown placed closer to Madison. The applause. The necklace beside the Luna crown. The empty bridal chamber. The veil on the bed. The half-erased red on the mirror. He had seen all of it. Too late. The bridal chamber had told the truth more clearly than any letter could have. Claire had not left in a storm of emotion. She had arranged her absence with care. The veil was not discarded. The ring was not broken. The mirror was not shattered. She had left evidence. Not drama. Evidence. Behind Adrian, his riders waited in uneasy silence. None of them crossed the marker. They knew the law. They knew Rowan Cross. They knew their king had already brought enough witnesses to his own humiliation. Rowan stood with one hand resting near the open carriage door. His expression remained calm. Blackwood, he said. Adrian's eyes did not leave Claire. This is between my bride and me. Claire's face changed at the word bride. Only slightly. But Adrian saw it. A door closing. Rowan answered before she did. Then perhaps you should have remembered that before you made your wedding hall choose sides. Adrian's jaw tightened. Careful. I am being careful, Rowan said. That is why she is standing where you cannot reach her. The words cut cleanly through the rain. Adrian stepped forward. Only one step. Every cross guard on the ridge shifted at once. Not dramatic. Not loud. Enough. The road filled with quiet warning. Claire lifted her hand. Not to Rowan. Not to the guards. To Adrian. A small motion. Stop. And because every man there was watching, Adrian had no choice but to feel what it meant that she could halt him with less effort than he had spent trying to keep her. He stopped. Claire lowered her hand. You should go back, she said. The sentence struck him harder than accusation. Go back. As if there were still a place behind him that had not changed. As if the wedding hall could still exist after the bride walked out of it. To what? Adrian asked before pride could stop him. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then she answered softly. To what you chose. Silence. The rain made it worse. Behind Adrian, one of his guards looked away. Adrian barely heard the horse's breathing. Barely felt the water running down his neck beneath the collar of his undone armor. His whole attention was on Claire's face, on the calm there, on the absence of the plea he had expected to find. I did not choose Madison over you, he said. Even as he spoke, the words sounded weak. Not because they were false, because they were incomplete. Claire heard that too. No, she said. You chose keeping her close over keeping me respected. His throat tightened. That was the thing about Claire. She had always been gentle with truth, trimming its edges before placing it in his hands. Tonight, she handed it to him whole. He did not know how to hold it. The council did not wear your mouth when you said her name. Adrian went still. Rowan's gaze moved briefly to Claire, not with surprise, but with something like respect. Adrian hated that he noticed. Claire stepped closer to the borderline, close enough that he could see the rain caught on her lashes, close enough to see the faint red mark at her throat where the bridal necklace had rested before she removed it. His hand lifted before he thought, not crossing the line, only reaching. Claire looked at it. That was all. He lowered it. The humiliation of that small obedience burned hotter than anger. Not because she had shamed him, because she had taught him, in front of his enemy, that he had lost the right to touch what he had failed to protect. You came after me, Claire said. Yes, but not when they moved the crown. He said nothing. Not when Madison stood beside it. Nothing. Not when the room clapped for her in my wedding hall. The rain fell harder. Adrian's face tightened. Claire nodded once, as if his silence had confirmed something she no longer needed confirmed. You came when I left. I came because you left. That is not love, Adrian. The words were quiet. They destroyed him anyway. For a moment, all he could see was the girl from years ago, sitting beside him in a cold council chamber after his father's death, writing letters by candlelight because he had been too angry to think clearly. Claire with ink on her fingers. Claire falling asleep over border reports. Claire smiling when he said he noticed what she did. He had noticed. He had simply let noticing become a substitute for choosing. I was wrong, he said. The confession came raw. Too raw for a king. Too late for a bride. Claire closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there was pain there. Real pain. But it did not move toward him. That was the difference. Once, her pain had always reached for him, as if he were the answer to wounds he helped create. Now it stayed with her. Hers to hold. Hers to heal. I know, she said. The words were not forgiveness. Only acknowledgement. That hurt more. Behind him, Madison's carriage lantern appeared faintly in the distance near the bend of the road. She had followed too. Of course she had. By morning, every court version of this night would need witnesses to survive. Claire saw the lantern. So did Adrian. Something inside him sank. Claire looked past him toward the light. Then back at him. She is waiting, she said. Adrian's voice broke slightly. I do not want her. Claire's expression softened. That was the cruelest mercy. Then you should not have used me to keep her near. He flinched. No council speech could soften that. No political excuse could reach it. Rowan opened the carriage door behind Claire, but he did not speak. Did not hurry her. Did not turn the moment into victory. Claire looked at the open door. Then at Adrian. This is where I stop being part of your unfinished decisions. Adrian shook his head once. Claire, please. The word please did not suit him. It should have pleased her. It did not. It only made the night sadder. You will regret leaving like this, he said, but the old command had fallen out of it. It sounded almost like fear. Claire gave him a small, tired smile. No, she said. You will. Silence. Absolute. The sentence entered him slowly. Then all at once, Claire turned away. Adrian took one instinctive step toward the line. Rowan's voice stopped him. Do not make her refusal into a war. Adrian froze. Because he could. That was the terrible truth. He could cross. He could challenge. He could turn heartbreak into politics and pride into bloodshed. And if he did, he would prove every reason she had stepped into the carriage. Claire did not look back this time. She climbed inside. Rowan waited until she settled, then closed the door gently. The carriage lantern glowed against the rain-dim glass. Through the window, Adrian saw her profile for one last moment. No veil, no crown, no necklace, no tears offered to him. Only Claire, the woman he had believed would understand her place. The woman who finally had. The driver snapped the reins. The cross carriage began to move down the road into enemy territory. Adrian stood at the border and watched it go. Behind him waited the palace. Madison, the council, the wedding hall filled with candles and no bride. Ahead of him, the carriage carried Claire into a darkness he could not command open. For the first time in his life, Alpha King Adrian Blackwood understood that losing a woman did not always sound like screaming. Sometimes it sounded like wheels on wet stone, a door closing softly, a name no longer answered, and the rain swallowing the last trace of the bride he had chosen too late. Rowan Cross did not speak until the border disappeared behind them. That was when Claire understood the difference between silence and waiting. Adrian's silence had always been full of expectation. It wanted her to fill it, soften it, explain herself inside it, until he could forgive her without changing. Rowan's silence asked nothing. It simply stayed. The carriage moved deeper into cross territory, iron wheels cutting through rain-soaked road, lanterns swaying gently with each turn. Outside, the trees grew darker and closer together, their branches bending low as if sheltering the path from the world Claire had just left behind. Inside, the air was warm enough to make her realize how cold she had been. That was dangerous. Warmth invited the body to remember pain. Claire sat with her small bag in her lap, both hands folded over the worn leather. She watched raindrops race across the window glass and tried not to picture the wedding hall. The Luna crown, Madison's pale gold dress, Adrian's face when he said her name. Madison Vale will remain by my side. The sentence returned quietly. It did not stab this time. It settled, like truth. Across from her, Rowan rested one hand against his knee, his gaze turned slightly toward the window. He had not asked why she stopped speaking at the border, had not asked whether Adrian had loved her, had not asked what he had promised Madison. Men often asked questions not because they wanted answers, but because they wanted ownership over the wound. Rowan seemed content to let the wound belong to her. That made it harder not to cry. Claire inhaled slowly. The breath trembled, only a little. Still, Rowan noticed. His eyes shifted to her face, then away again with deliberate care. There is a blanket beneath the seat, he said. Not take it. Not you are cold. Just information. Claire looked down. A folded dark wool blanket rested under the opposite bench. She reached for it herself and pulled it over her lap. Thank you, she said. Rowan nodded once. The carriage continued. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Claire said, You are not going to ask what happened? No, she looked at him. He met her gaze this time. If you want it known, you will tell me. The answer was too simple, too respectful. It hurt in a place Adrian had worn thin. Claire lowered her eyes to her hands. Everyone saw enough. Everyone saw the public part, Rowan said. That is rarely the first wound. The words entered gently, not soft, gentle. There was a difference. Claire thought of all the wounds no one had seen. Adrian forgetting her at formal dinners and calling it a crowded evening. Adrian letting council elders praise Madison's bloodline while Claire sat beside him in silence. Adrian touching her hand in private, then moving away when someone important entered the room. Adrian saying trust me whenever trust had already cost her too much. No, she said quietly. It was not the first. Rowan did not ask for more. That was why more came. He told me I would have a place after the wedding, Claire said. He did not say it would be the place of a woman expected to watch another one stand closer to the crown. Her voice remained calm. That surprised her. Perhaps there were only so many ways a heart could break before it began reporting the damage like weather. Rowan's expression darkened slightly. not performative anger. Recognition. Blackwood has always confused patience with permission, he said. Claire almost smiled. That sounds like something you have wanted to say for a long time. I have said worse. To his face. When necessary. This time, a small sound escaped her. Not laughter exactly, but close enough to feel strange. Claire looked down quickly, as if the sound had embarrassed her. Rowan did not smile at her like he had won something. He only let the moment pass. That made it safer. The carriage began to slow. Claire looked out and saw a roadside lodge built of dark stone, with smoke rising from a chimney and 2 cross guards waiting beneath the awning. No banners, no court reception, no curious crowd gathered to inspect the bride who had fled Blackwood Palace. The carriage stopped. Rowan opened the door and stepped out first. Then he moved aside. Always aside. Claire gathered the blanket and her bag before stepping down. Mud pulled at her shoes. Her legs ached more than she expected. The long night had settled into her body now that fear was no longer pushing it forward. For a moment, she swayed. Rowan saw. He did not grab her. His hand lifted slightly, palm open, waiting for permission. Claire looked at it, then placed her fingers against his. Only briefly, only enough to steady herself. The contact was warm, controlled, gone the moment she no longer needed it. No claim attached, no debt. A woman with silver-streaked hair opened the lodge door. She had broad shoulders, sharp eyes, and an apron dusted with flour. "My king," she said. "Mrs. Bell," Rowan replied. "Lady Whitmore needs a room, dry clothes, and food. No questions unless she invites them." Mrs. Bell looked at Claire once. Not at her body, not at her missing jewelry, not at the grief she was trying to hold upright. Once, accurately. Then she nodded. "Well," the woman said, "come in before the rain decides to marry you instead." Claire blinked. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Small, broken at the edges, but real. The sound startled her so much she almost covered her mouth. Mrs. Bell pretended not to notice. Rowan did the same. That kindness nearly ruined her. Inside, the lodge smelled of bread, smoke, and old wood. A fire burned low near the hearth. Someone had placed a basin of warm water on a table and folded plain clothes beside it. Not silk, not bridal white. Just dark cotton, wool stockings, and a soft gray shawl. Claire stood before them. Her throat tightened. No one had asked her what color she wanted to wear tonight. But someone had understood she might not want white. Mrs. Bell gestured toward a side room. "You can change there. I'll bring tea." Claire nodded. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at Rowan. He remained near the entrance, rainwater dripping from his coat onto the stone floor, already turned partly away as if to give her privacy. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. The room quieted. Even Mrs. Bell stilled near the hearth. Rowan looked at Claire. For a long moment, he gave no answer. Then he said, "Because you walked out before they finished turning betrayal into ceremony." Silence. Claire felt the words settle over her like the first honest thing placed on her shoulders all night. Not flattery. Not rescue. Recognition. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "And because," Rowan added, quieter, "no one should have to ask permission to leave a room where they are being erased." There it was. The word she had not used. Erased. Not replaced. Not embarrassed. Erased. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, the firelight had blurred slightly. She nodded because speaking would have broken something she was not ready to let fall. Then she stepped into the side room and closed the door. Alone, at last, Claire removed the wet cloak, the green dress, the muddy shoes. Piece by piece, the night came off her body. Not the pain, not yet, but the evidence of running. She washed her face in the warm basin. Bridal red dissolved into the water, turning it faintly pink before disappearing completely. Claire looked into the small mirror above the table. No veil, no necklace, no crown, no husband. For one breath, grief rose so sharply she gripped the basin with both hands. Then she remembered the border, the carriage door. The question, by force or by choice? Claire lifted her chin. Choice, she whispered to the woman in the mirror. Her reflection did not look healed. It did not need to. It only needed to look real. When she stepped back into the main room, wearing gray wool and dry stockings, Rowan did not look at her like a rescued bride. He looked at her like a woman who had crossed a border and survived the first mile. Mrs. Bell placed tea in her hands. Warm, plain, ungilded. Claire took it. Outside, Thunder rolled toward Blackwood land. Somewhere behind the storm, Adrian would return to a wedding hall without a bride. Madison would stand beside a crown that suddenly looked less like victory and more like evidence. The council would begin rewriting the night before dawn. But Claire was no longer there to help them make it sound gentle. She sat by the fire in enemy territory, both hands around a cup of tea, and let the first quiet after leaving belong to her. Not to Adrian. Not to Madison. Not to the kingdom. Hers. By sunrise, Blackwood Palace had learned how loud an empty bridal chamber could be. No one said it that way, of course. The council called it an unfortunate disturbance. The priestess called it an incomplete ceremony. Madison Vale called it a misunderstanding, softly enough that people could pretend softness was truth. Adrian said nothing. That frightened them most. He stood in the center of the bridal chamber, while pale mourning pressed against the windows and servants hovered uselessly near the door. The bed remained untouched. The veil lay across the silk sheets. The bride ring rested beside it, small and silver and never worn. On the mirror, half of Claire's bridal color had been wiped away. Not all. Half. That was what held him there. Not the missing gowns. Not the open passage discovered behind the prayer screen. Not even the report that Rowan Cross's carriage had crossed the eastern border before dawn. The mirror. That ruined reflection she had left behind. Adrian stared at the red smear until his eyes burned. It looked like the moment between staying and leaving. Like a mouth that had almost spoken, then decided silence would hurt more. Behind him, an elder cleared his throat. Your Majesty, the council believes we should issue a statement before rumors spread. Adrian did not turn. Rumors. For years, Claire had softened rumors before they became knives. She knew which noble families needed reassurance, which widows needed payment before grief became rebellion, which servants carried news faster than official messengers. She understood the small veins of the kingdom better than men who only studied maps. And they had called her merely suitable. Leave, Adrian said. The elder paused. My king. Adrian turned then. Slowly. Every servant lowered their eyes. Leave the room. No one asked again. They filed out one by one. The elder last. Madison remained at the threshold, pale gold gown replaced by a mourning dress too carefully chosen to look humble. Adrian, she said. He looked at her. For one suspended second, he saw the woman he had almost placed beside the crown. Beautiful. Composed. Politically useful. Everything the council had praised. And standing in Claire's bridal doorway, she looked wrong. Not evil. Not victorious. Wrong. This is not your room, he said. Madison's face changed. A small wound. A deserved one. I came to help. No, Adrian said. You came to see what she left. Her lips parted. No answer came. Because it was true. The truth had become inconveniently visible now. In the veil. In the ring. In the half-erased mouth. In the empty chair beside the window where Claire must have sat before deciding there would be no more sitting, no more waiting, no more turning his cruelty into something survivable. Madison lowered her eyes. The council will blame me. Adrian almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because everyone in this palace still believed blame was the most important thing to distribute. Claire had not left because Madison stood near the crown. Not only. She had left because Adrian let her. Because he saw the crown placed wrong and did not correct it. Because he heard the applause and did not stop it. Because when Claire removed the necklace, he worried first about the scene. His hand curled around the bride ring. Cold silver pressed into his palm. No, he said quietly. They will blame whoever they need to survive the morning. Madison stared at him. And you? Adrian looked back at the mirror. The half-erased red seemed darker in daylight. I will not survive it cleanly. Silence. Madison left without another word. Only then did Adrian move. He crossed to the bed and lifted the veil. It was lighter than he expected. That seemed cruel. A thing that had carried so much meaning should have weighed more. He remembered Claire beneath it at the entrance of the hall. Soft. Fair. Round-cheeked. Nervous in a way she tried to hide because Blackwood Court had never been kind to women whose feelings took up space. He had seen her. No. Worse. He had noticed her. And then chosen not to act. Adrian sat on the edge of the untouched bed, the veil in one hand, the ring in the other, while the palace woke around him. The wedding hall below remained decorated. White flowers, blue flames, silver candles burned down to stubs. The Luna crown had been removed from the table before dawn. Not by his order. By the council's shame. Good. Let them carry something. A knock sounded once. His captain entered after permission was given, though Adrian did not remember speaking. Report. The captain's face was careful. The Eastern Scouts confirmed Lady Whitmore was taken to a cross lodge near the Ridge Road. Taken. Adrian looked up. The captain corrected himself immediately. Escorted, he said. By choice. Those two words entered the room like punishment. By choice. Adrian had heard Claire say it at the gate. Had seen Rowan ask the question Adrian had never asked. By force or by choice? Adrian had stood in his own courtyard and realized his enemy understood something about Claire he had failed to honor. She is still there? He asked. As of first light. Cross guards are posted along the road. No hostile movement. Adrian's mouth tightened. Of course not. Rowan Cross was too careful for that. Too disciplined. Too infuriatingly precise. He had not stolen Claire. That was the unbearable part. He had opened a door. Adrian had built the room she needed to leave. The captain waited. Adrian stood. For a moment, the wolf beneath his skin surged with old instinct. Go. Retrieve. Claim. Mine. The word struck him like a wound. Mine. He had thought it so easily last night. Mine, when she stood at the gate. Mine, when Rowan opened the carriage. Mine, when the road took her away. But what had he made hers? Not the crown. Not the hall. Not even the dignity of being chosen without explanation. Adrian closed his eyes. The wolf snarled. He breathed through it. No riders crossed the border, he said. The captain blinked. My king. No challenges. No threats. No messages demanding her return. The words tasted like blood. Good. Maybe restraint should hurt the person who learned it too late. The captain bowed. And Lady Whitmore? Adrian looked at the veil in his hand. Lady Whitmore. Not bride. Not Luna. Not the woman who had carried the quiet weight beneath his crown. Send her belongings, he said. The captain hesitated. All of them. Adrian looked around the chamber. The dresses chosen in Blackwood colors. The jewelry she had not taken. The books with notes in the margins. The shawl she wore on cold mornings. The letters she had written and never been thanked for. Yes, he said. All of them. Then his gaze landed on the ring in his palm. Except this. Not because he had a right to keep it. Because he had a debt to return it himself. Later, when the palace halls filled with cautious movement, Adrian walked alone to the wedding hall. No crown. No council. No Madison. Just the king and the room where he had lost a bride by asking her to make room for another woman. The hall smelled of melted wax and wilting flowers. Every chair remained exactly where it had been. Every witness had gone. That made the room worse. Without people, there was nothing left to distract from what had happened. Adrian stopped before the altar. The Luna crown was gone, but the bridal necklace remained where Claire had placed it, beside the empty cushion. Careful, respectful, final. He picked it up. The moonstone was cold. Adrian remembered his own voice. Do not make this a scene. His hand tightened around the necklace until the chain bit into his skin. The scene had not been Claire leaving. The scene had been him choosing another woman while she stood there dressed in faith. He understood that now. Not enough. Too late. But truly. Outside, morning bells rang for a wedding that had not become a marriage. Adrian stood beneath the dead blue flames and realized something simple, devastating, and impossible to repair before noon. Claire Whitmore had not walked into his enemy's arms because Rowan Cross had taken her. She had walked there because it was the first place that did not ask her to disappear politely. And Adrian, who had once believed her silence meant she would stay, finally heard what that silence had been saying for years. I am tired. I am alone. I am leaving. He closed his hand around the necklace and bowed his head. Not like a king. Like a man standing at the altar after the bride had already chosen the road. Claire Whitmore did not sleep the first morning in enemy territory. She tried. Mrs. Bell gave her a small upstairs room at the back of the lodge, a clean bed, a dry nightdress, and curtains thick enough to keep the rainlight out. The room smelled of cedar, soap, and old stone. Nothing in it belonged to Blackwood. That should have helped. It did not. Claire lay beneath a wool blanket with her eyes open, listening to the fire crack below, the low voices of cross guards outside, the occasional sound of horses shifting in the stable. Her body was exhausted. Her legs ached. Her shoulders felt bruised from the wedding gown. Her throat still carried the shape of words she had not screamed. But sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crown. Not Adrian's face. Not Madison's pale gold dress. The crown, placed a few inches too close to another woman. A small distance. A complete answer. Near midday, Mrs. Bell knocked once and entered with a tray after Claire said yes. Bread. Stew. Tea. No questions. Claire sat up slowly. You should eat, Mrs. Bell said. I know. Knowing and doing are different skills. Claire looked at her. The older woman did not smile. That made the sentence funnier somehow. Claire took the spoon. Her first bite tasted like nothing. The second tasted like salt. The third made her realize she was starving. Mrs. Bell busied herself with the curtains, pretending not to notice. That was kindness too. After the tray was half empty, footsteps sounded in the hall. Measured. Heavy. Then a pause outside the open door. Rowan Cross did not enter. Lady Whitmore, he said from the threshold. Claire looked toward him. He stood outside the room, one hand resting loosely at his side, dark coat replaced by a simple black shirt and riding trousers. Without the rain and the carriage lantern between them, he looked less like a myth Adrian's council feared and more like a man who knew exactly how much space his presence took. He remained beyond the doorway. Another choice she noticed. Yes, Claire said. A Blackwood escort arrived at the lower road. Her hand tightened around the spoon. Rowan saw it. His voice stayed even. They brought trunks, books, personal items. No soldiers passed the outer marker. Claire looked down at the tray. Her belongings. So Adrian had not come himself. Not yet. That surprised her, wounded her, relieved her. All three feelings arrived together, tangled enough that she did not try to separate them. Did he send a message? She asked. No, the answer landed strangely. For years, she had wanted Adrian to stop explaining late and start understanding early. Now his silence felt like both progress and punishment. Rowan added, there is one sealed box. He marked it private. Claire closed her eyes briefly. The ring. She knew before seeing it. A circle that had never reached her finger. A promise arriving after the bride had left the room. Where is it? Downstairs. Did you open it? No, she looked at him. Somewhere in Blackwood, someone would have opened it for her safety, her reputation, her own good. Then they would have explained why privacy was inconvenient when politics were involved. Rowan only waited. Claire set the spoon down. I will come down. You do not have to. I know. The words left her before she thought about them. Then she realized she meant them. That was new. Downstairs, the lodge common room had been cleared of guests. Her trunk sat near the hearth, rain beating on the leather. One box lay apart from the others. Small, black, sealed with the Blackwood crest. Claire stood before it for a long moment. Mrs. Bell hovered near the kitchen door. Rowan remained by the far wall. Neither moved closer. Claire broke the seal. Inside lay the bride ring. Beside it, the bridal necklace she had left near the Luna crown. No letter. No apology. No request to return. Only the things she had removed. For a moment, Claire hated him for that. Then she understood. Adrian had not sent words because words were what he had always used to delay truth. This was not forgiveness, not repair, but it was recognition. He had returned what he should never have expected her to wear after choosing another woman. Claire lifted the necklace. The moonstone caught the firelight. Beautiful, cold, finished. Her fingers trembled once. Only once. Mrs. Bell said nothing. Rowan said nothing. The silence let her decide what the tremble meant. Claire placed the necklace back in the box and closed the lid. Put it with the trunks, she said. Mrs. Bell nodded. As you wish. As you wish. Another phrase people had rarely meant around her. A guard entered then, bowing to Rowan. My king. A messenger from Blackwood requests permission to approach the outer court. Claire's stomach tightened. Rowan's eyes remained on the guard. Name. Madison Vale. The room went cold in a way fire could not fix. Mrs. Bell's mouth flattened. Rowan looked at Claire. No question spoken. All of it offered. She could refuse. She could hide. She could let Rowan send Madison back down the road without ever hearing her voice. For one breath, Claire wanted that. Then she imagined Madison standing beside the Luna crown. Soft face. Lowered eyes. Apology shaped just enough to make betrayal look graceful. Claire had left Adrian. But Madison still lived inside the room Claire had walked out of. Some doors needed to be closed from the outside. I will see her, Claire said. Rowan's gaze sharpened slightly. Here. No. Claire looked toward the window, where the rain had finally stopped. Outside, Mrs. Bell exhaled like she disapproved, but respected the decision enough to swallow the lecture. Rowan nodded to the guard. She may approach the courtyard. Alone. Minutes later, Claire stood beneath the lodge awning in the clean gray dress Mrs. Bell had given her. Her hair was unpinned, her face bare, no veil, no necklace, no crown near enough to confuse the room. Madison Vale stepped from a Blackwood carriage at the edge of the courtyard. She looked smaller in daylight, still beautiful, still composed, but without blue flames, applause, and Adrian's silence protecting her. She looked like what she was. A woman who had accepted a place before it was emptied properly. Madison stopped several feet away. Claire. Claire did not correct the familiarity. She did not welcome it either. Madison. Rainwater dripped from the awning between them. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Madison clasped her hands. I did not come to defend what happened. That is wise. A flicker crossed Madison's face. Pain, perhaps, or pride startled by honesty. I thought he had told you, Madison said. Claire studied her. There it was. The first offering. Not apology. Distance from blame. He told me enough when he said your name. Madison swallowed. The council believed my alliances would stabilize the transition. The council did not stand in your dress. No, the council did not move closer to the crown. Madison's eyes lowered. Good. Let truth have at least one witness who did not interrupt it. Claire continued, voice calm. Did you know he would choose you before the ceremony? Madison did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. Yes, she said finally. Claire nodded once. The word entered her without surprise. Surprise required a softer night than the one she had survived. And did you know I did not? Madison's face tightened. A longer silence. Yes. Behind Claire, somewhere near the lodge wall, Rowan shifted slightly. Not forward. Just present. Madison noticed him and looked away quickly. Claire did not. She kept her eyes on Madison. You looked sorry, Claire said. In the hall. I was. No, Claire said gently. You looked prepared to be forgiven. That struck harder. Madison's composure cracked at the edge. Only a little. Enough. Claire felt no triumph. Only exhaustion. Madison whispered. I loved him first. Claire almost smiled. There it was. The old claim. The one women were taught to carry like proof that time made them rightful owners of a man's future. Maybe, Claire said. But I was the one standing in the wedding gown. Madison looked at her then. Really looked. At the plain dress. The soft body. The bare throat. The woman left after the bride walked away. I did not think you would leave, Madison admitted. Claire breathed out slowly. Neither did I, some old part of her whispered. But she did not give Madison that peace. No one did, Claire said. Madison's eyes shone, though no tears fell. He did not complete the ceremony after you left. Claire looked toward the road. For 1 second, the wound shifted. Not healed. Not reopened. Just moved. Good, she said. Madison blinked. Claire looked back at her. Not because it changes anything for me. Because at least one lie did not become law. Silence. Madison had no answer for that. Finally, Claire stepped back toward the lodge door. We are done. Madison's lips parted. That is all. Claire paused. For years, she had given people more than they deserved. More explanation. More softness. More time to make peace with what they had done to her. Not today. That is all I owe you, she said. Madison stood very still. Then she bowed her head. Not deeply. Not theatrically. Enough to acknowledge a woman she had helped erase. Claire accepted it with silence. Then she turned and went inside. Rowan followed only after she crossed the threshold, closing the door behind them with quiet finality. Inside, the lodge felt warmer. Mrs. Bell took one look at Claire's face and set another cup of tea on the table. Claire sat. Her hands did not shake this time. Rowan stood across from her. You handled that with more grace than she earned, he said. Claire wrapped both hands around the cup. No, she said after a moment. I handled it with less anger than I had. The corner of Rowan's mouth changed. Almost a smile. Almost respect made visible. Outside, Madison's carriage rolled away toward Blackwood Land. Claire did not watch it go. She had watched enough people leave with pieces of her life. This time, nothing in her followed. Not Adrian. Not Madison. Not the crown. Not the bride she had been. The box with the necklace and ring rested near her trunks, closed and quiet. Evidence, no longer invitation. Claire lifted the tea to her lips. Warm. Plain. Hers. For the first time since the wedding hall, she felt the smallest edge of something that was not pain. Not happiness. Not yet. Only space. But space, Claire was beginning to understand, was where a woman learned how large she had always been. 3 months later, Blackwood Palace still kept the wedding hall closed. Not officially. Officially, the council called it restoration work. The blue flame bowls had cracked during an unexpected thermal shift. The marble near the altar needed polishing. The floral arches had been removed for seasonal reasons. Powerful people loved practical language for haunted rooms. But everyone knew. No one wanted to stand where Alpha King Adrian Blackwood had chosen another woman and watched his bride walk out with her necklace left beside the Luna crown. The hall remained locked. The crown remained unworn. And Claire Whitmore remained gone. At first, Blackwood Court spoke of her as if absence were a mood. She would calm down. She would send terms. She would remember her duty. She would realize Rowan Cross was dangerous. She would return before the first moon because women like Claire did not survive long outside the rooms they had been trained to soften. Then the first moon passed. Then the second. By the third, they stopped saying she would return. Not because they respected her choice. Because even denial grew tired when fed the same empty chair every morning. In Cross territory, Claire did not become a queen. That surprised people most. Rowan did not place her beside his throne for political spectacle. He did not announce her as a prize taken from Blackwood. He did not dress her in enemy colors and parade her before councils hungry for insult. He gave her a room with wide windows. A desk. Work when she asked for it. Silence when she did not. Mrs. Bell gave her more food than she claimed to need and less pity than anyone expected a wounded bride to receive. Cross guards began bringing her disputes about supply routes because she answered clearly. Village widows came with petitions because someone had told them Lady Whitmore remembered names. She did. Of course she did. Remembering had always been one of her quiet rebellions. Claire's body softened into rest before her heart did. She slept through entire nights. Then woke guilty. Then stopped apologizing to the ceiling for peace. She wore gray wool, forest green, dark blue. Never bridal white. Not because white frightened her, but because she no longer dressed for ghosts. One morning, Rowan found her in the east study reviewing winter grain records. He stopped at the doorway, as always. "You were supposed to rest today," he said. Claire did not look up. "You were supposed to stop losing grain to northern road delays." A pause. Then, almost amused, "I see." She marked a number in the margin. "Do you?" "I see that I am being corrected in my own fortress." Accurately. This time, his smile appeared fully. Small. Rare. Dangerous in how quietly it arrived. Claire saw it and felt something inside her answer. Not a bond. Not fate. Not the desperate pull of a woman grateful to be noticed. Something simpler. Interest. Her own. That made it safer. Rowan crossed only as far as the table, then placed a sealed letter beside her hand. Blackwood Crest. Claire went still. The room did not. The fire kept burning. The papers remained spread before her. Rowan did not ask whether she wanted him to stay. He did not assume she wanted him to leave. He waited at the edge of both possibilities. Claire touched the seal. From Adrian? Yes. She opened it. The letter was short. No plea. No claim. No poetry written too late to matter. Only a few lines in Adrian's careful hand. The wedding hall is closed. Madison has left court. The crown remains where you last saw it. I understand now that you did not leave with my enemy. You left through the only door I had not taught to close. Claire read it once. Then again. Her chest ached. Not the old ache. A quieter one. The kind that came when a wound finally admitted it was becoming a scar. She folded the letter. Then placed it in the fire. Rowan watched the paper curl into ash. "Do you regret burning it?" he asked. Claire looked at the flames. No, a pause. Then she added, "I regret how long I waited for him to write something worth burning." Rowan's gaze settled on her face. Not pity. Never pity. Respect. And something warmer he did not force her to name. 2 days later, Adrian came to the border. Alone. No council. No Madison. No guards carrying authority behind him like a second crown. He stood beside the black stone marker in a plain dark coat, the bride ring and necklace held in a small velvet box. Claire knew before Rowan told her. Perhaps not through magic. Perhaps through memory. Some departures still heard the footsteps of the life they had left. "You do not have to see him," Rowan said. Claire tied her cloak at the throat. "I know." And she looked toward the road. "And that is why I can." The border was quiet when she arrived. No rain this time. No dramatic storm. Only cold sunlight over wet grass and two kingdoms breathing carefully on opposite sides of an old line. Adrian looked older. Not weak. Not destroyed. Only less certain that power could repair what character had broken. His eyes found Claire and stayed there. Not on her body. Not on the absence of white. Her face. That was new. Too late. But new. Claire, he said. Adrian. Her voice did not shake. His did. Only slightly. I brought these back. He opened the box. The bride ring rested beside the necklace, polished and useless. Claire looked at them. Once, those objects would have held her future. Now they were only silver shaped around a mistake. I sent them before, she said. I know. His throat moved. I needed to return them properly. Properly. There was sadness in that word. A man learning respect after disrespect had already done its work. He set the box on the stone marker between them. I am sorry, he said. Nothing followed. No defense. No counsel. No explanation about Madison's alliances or transition moons or political necessity. Just the apology. Late. Clean. Insufficient. Claire accepted it with a silence that did not open any doors. Adrian seemed to understand. I did love you, he said. The words moved through the morning carefully, as if even he knew love was not enough evidence in a room full of harm. Claire looked at him for a long time. Yes, she said. But you loved me most when I made your life easier. He closed his eyes. The sentence reached him. She saw it. No answer rose. Good. Some truths deserved to stand without being negotiated. When he opened his eyes, they were wet. He did not let the tears fall. That was fine. She did not need proof. I thought you would stay, he whispered. Claire nodded. So did I. That hurt them both. For different reasons. Behind her, Rowan waited near the cross side of the road. Far enough not to own the moment. Close enough that Claire did not have to pretend she stood alone. Adrian looked past her once. Jealousy crossed his face, then faded into something sadder. Recognition. He gives you room, Adrian said. Claire did not turn. Yes. Is that enough? She thought about that. About the East study. Mrs. Bell's tea. The guards who brought her problems instead of gossip. Rowan stopping at doorways. The way her own laughter had started returning in small, suspicious pieces. It is where enough can begin, she said. Adrian breathed out slowly, as if that answer wounded him more than love would have. Because love, he understood too late, had never been the missing thing. Room had been. Respect had been. Choice had been. Claire reached for the velvet box. For one moment, Adrian looked almost hopeful. Then she closed the lid and pushed it gently back to his side of the stone. His hope folded in on itself. I do not need these, she said. His fingers touched the box. But they were yours. No, Claire said softly. They were meant for the woman who stayed after being replaced. Silence. Clean. Final. Adrian lowered his head. This time, not like a king. Like a man accepting a boundary. I will not come again, he said. Claire believed him. That, perhaps, was the last gift he could give her. She nodded once. Goodbye, Adrian. He flinched at the completeness of it. Then bowed his head. Not deeply. Not dramatically. Enough. Claire turned first. She felt him watch her walk back toward cross territory. Once, that would have pulled at her. Now it only marked the distance she had earned. Rowan fell into step beside her when she reached the road. Still not touching. Still not claiming. After a while, he asked, Are you all right? Claire looked ahead at the fortress, dark and honest beneath the morning sun. Then at her own hands. Bare throat. No ring. No necklace. No crown. No apology needed. Yes, she said, and the word felt unfamiliar only because it belonged entirely to her. Behind them, Adrian remained at the border with the closed velvet box in his hands. Ahead, cross territory opened its gates. Claire walked through them without looking back. Not into enemy arms this time. Not away from a wedding. Not as a bride abandoned in public. But as a woman who had finally learned the difference between being chosen and being kept. The gates closed gently behind her. Not like a prison. Like a boundary. And far away, in Blackwood Palace, the wedding hall stayed locked around its dead blue flames, its empty altar, and the memory of the night an Alpha chose another woman. But Claire Whitmore was no longer inside that memory. She had stepped out of it. She had made room for herself. And when the world looked at her now, it did not find the bride Adrian lost to his enemy. It found the woman he had taught to leave.